All right, let's get this shit started. My friend.
Oh my god, you're very loud. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. Chat, how's the relative voice volume? His voice relative to mine.
Yeah, I can turn it up if you want.
I'll adjust it on mine. It's fine? Okay, wonderful. All right. Hey, how about you introduce yourself to the class?
Okay. My name's Scott. I'm a second-year sociology student at the London School of Economics and Political Sciences, if you want to add that bit on. And I'm currently doing a module called Reactionary Radicalism, Populism in the 21st Century. And so I wanted to get some people like your good self to talk to me about that. It's much nicer talking to lefties about these things than it is fascists, which I normally talk to.
Oh,
so
you have a history of engaging with them for schoolwork? That's unfortunate.
Well, yeah, my specialty, or well, not specialty, my favorite subject to look into is like white nationalism, which is particularly on the rise in the UK. So you get to interact with a fair few of them.
Yeah, I've heard rumors. Sorry about all that. I'm sure you'll do better next time.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just nicer talking to lefties because we can circle jerk together and we can have a good old time.
Yeah, I've already whipped mine out. All right.
Oh,
let's get started. Hit me with it. I'm ready for this curriculum.
Okay. I mean, I'll just do some warm up stuff. So, like, I know you also studied sociology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why?
When I was younger, I was mostly interested in the hard sciences, big brain boy and all that. But in my senior year of high school, I had an AP comparative government course, wonderful course, taught me the different electoral processes of England, Iran, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, America, you get the process.
Yeah.
Wonderful course. And I had a professor, Professor Hinojosa, who was remarkably learned, and his passion for the subject material single-handedly turned me into a fan of the social sciences. So I initially jumped in on the political science memes, but when I went to community college and started actually taking political science courses, I was a little disappointed by how amoral they were. They were more interested in understanding the motivations and the rationale behind certain decisions rather than understanding how we can improve and change those decisions. So I switched to sociology and never looked back.
It's interesting. So you did the community college route, and then I'm guessing you transferred after first year or so?
After second year, I got my AA in a community college, and then I went to a proper university. Don't regret it at all.
I mean, isn't that's quite a common trend among people in America, though, right? To save some money?
Yeah, it's part of money-saving measure and part of I didn't do too great in high school measure. But, yeah, no, it's growing increasingly common.
Yeah. I mean, at least there's a system like that in place that enables people that didn't do so well in high school to actually, have a shot.
Yeah, if it weren't for that, I probably wouldn't have a BS.
Yeah. So what has anything frustrated you about your study of sociology?
Yeah, mostly liberals. There were a whole lot of namby-pamby dipshit bitches in my sociology courses. Really frustrated me. A lot of people really can't wrap their head around the fact that all politics, all forms of systemic advocacy are an extension of violence. The only power in this world is the power to hurt other people. It's unfortunate, but it is literally the only means by which you can compel someone to do something they don't want to do, reliably at least. So they don't understand that we live in a system of violence. We perpetuate a system of violence when we vote, when we call the cops, when we really do anything. And therefore, violence is the means by which we will arrive at a better society. It was very frustrating, these pacifist dipshits that I had to contend with.
Watch out, you're sounding less like a communist and more like a Weberian there.
No. Okay, look, Weber had some good ideas, all right, but no, I wholeheartedly contend the necessity of violent advocacy for pretty much every social movement. I mean, even liberals do it; they just don't recognize that legislating warfare against the developing world and calling police on scary-looking black kids is a form of political violence.
Yeah, would you say that's because they've accepted this legitimate monopoly of violence by the state, and they don't see it as an act of violence itself?
100%. Yeah, it's a big issue. I'd hoped that the sociological imagination that you're taught to develop in our major, would have encouraged them to look at the process a little more critically, but nope.
By the way,
liberalism's deep-seated.
If you can hear a screeching sound that sounds like a right-wing person screaming, it's actually just a train outside my window.
Gotcha. I was actually going to say it sounded like a belt sander, but well taken.
So I don't think it's wrong in calling you a communist.
It's not. I don't really. Yeah. Generally, when I'm speaking with other left-leaning people, I try to avoid using communist, leftist, socialist, demsoc, anarcho-syndicalist, anarcho-communist, because I really hate leftist infighting. But suffice it to say, I am a radical anti-capitalist who believes in the collectivization of the means of production and believes in the necessity of a violent revolution. I think that pretty accurately groups me.
Yeah. So what attracts you to this, to these values and ethics of socialism or communism, I should say?
I believe very firmly in the Marxian notion of the oh god, it's early. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it. Marx posited that
that's okay.
The way in which you make a member of a species happy is by looking at the way in which they relate to their environment. For humans, it's created species being. I am a tremendous fan of creative production myself. I like creativity. I like film and media and art and animation. I like these things, and I like producing these things. And I know most people share my values in that regard. I've seen so many fucking boomer factory workers or desk job wage slaves get this genuine look of joy on their face when they get an opportunity to doodle some little comic, if they have like a pretense or an excuse to do so. Humans enjoy being creative, and I don't think that right now our society is geared towards acclimating humans towards that goal, towards achieving happiness, towards achieving productivity and efficiency through the means by which they could best experience life.
That's actually, you're perhaps one of the first left-leaning individuals that went straight to species being. Is one of Marx's earlier works that doesn't really, it's not really brought up as much as I think it should be.
I think, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just think capitalism has destroyed many people's abilities to envision a better world. Which is very saddening. A lot of people, when they think of the future, they think like, all right, well, we've pretty much nailed society down. Now it's just about getting smaller, cooler phones. We'll get the cars that drive faster. Business casual Monday through Thursday. Friday, just regular casual. This is it. This is pretty much society for the rest of time. We can go into space. We can terraform Mars. We can do all this cool, crazy, fancy future shit. But by God, we are not taking away casual fucking Fridays. This is the archetype around which society is going to be oriented until we die in the fucking heat death of the universe. It's very saddening to me. There are sorry, that train. Do you live next to like directly next to the tracks?
I mean, yeah, I live so I live in London, but I live right next to King's Cross.
Oh.
Don't know whether you've heard of that.
Oh, yeah. No, of course,
the Harry Potter place. So yeah, it gets quite noisy.
I do want to say, as a point of contention, I am familiar with the cultural significance of King's Cross beyond its being featured in Harry Potter. But
it's my bad. When talking to Americans, it's very hard to talk about geography, especially in the UK, because of the metropole of London. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can quiet this down a bit.
Gotcha.
There we go. It should be a bit better now.
I knew you had it in
Close
you.
everything else.
All I mean to say is that humans are, I believe, we're a evolutionary anomaly. We're capable of incredible things. We've done a remarkable amount of work on this planet, some good, some bad, over the past couple centuries. To suggest to me that we have found the fundamental, the ideal social arrangement, one in which people are ideologically compelled to produce labor for the benefit of people who do nothing for society, a society in which people have no real means by which to relate to their community at large. They do so usually at the cost of their financial development. The idea that we have reached the pinnacle, it's very saddening to me. I think it's very essential that we sort of keep our notebook out, that we keep trying. And I think socialism, communism, anarchism, whatever, is the next best step towards finding what might really work for us in the long term. And a century from then, who knows? Maybe that'll fuck up. We can keep trying. I just want to see us continue to develop.
So, are you from that last sort of snippet where you said, who knows? Maybe that will fail as well. I'm guessing you're not a Hegelian then. You don't subscribe to the end of history theory.
Oh God, no. Fuck it. No. Fuck the end of history. I hate that concept. The idea, no matter where it's like how humans make themselves miserable no matter their circumstances. If you're wealthy, you can be less happy than some poor Bangladeshian kid who gets delighted because he gets 2 dumplings that week instead of 1, or some shit. The human brain, it's like a rubber band. It's reciprocal. It's elastic. And much in the same respects that the happiness that we experience can be very much detached from the material conditions we experience. The antagonism society experiences is very much inevitable and a reciprocal product of the circumstances of that time. I don't believe we are ever going to reach a period in history where things are just fine forever. We've resolved all antagonisms. Everything is fine. There are plenty of examples I can think of where people like creating problems essentially out of nothing. And I think that's a good thing. It encourages growth and change. I think the idea of the end of history is very much a regressive one, and I do hope we steer away from that in the future ahead.
Oh, so I mean that pretty much answers my next question, which was, are you influenced more by orthodox or heterodox roots of communism?
Oh, there you fucking go.
Seems like, yeah. So you more of a neo-Marxist then?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely lean towards like the Foucault, the postmodern, Jordan Peterson's postmodern neo-Marxist philosophy.
You're a filthy post-structuralist.
I think the ideas posited by post-structuralists, when adopted as a holistic measure of addressing social issues, fail miserably. I think holistically, the innate nihilism of their beliefs, the unwillingness to commit to a solid narrative, the unwillingness to commit to a solid moral juncture or a moral condemnation, in many cases is antithetical to the tools we need to make society better. But I think that reading them and learning from them can be tremendously helpful when helping us contextualize the ways in which older modernist theories can be brought into the new world. Just my opinion, though, and I'm only an undergrad. It's a very complicated subject. I'm sure my opinions would be open to change if I furthered my education. Oh,
yeah, I mean, especially thinkers like Foucault and, Butler for me is one of the post-structuralists that, like, I don't think even PhD level you can really truly understand a lot of what she posits in her theories. But again, I think that's the trouble with post-structuralists as a whole. They devote so much of their work and time to extremely specific scenarios. it takes a lot to read them and actually understand them.
Yeah, we're a long way away from like the Marx, the Weberian days of just like, hey, here's a smart guy. He's got lots of good ideas, you know?
Yeah. So we've basically already understand that you're for the revolution. You're against evolutionist styles of communism, right?
I think that reformism has a valid place in the revolutionary process. I think that it develops class consciousness, and it can consolidate allies on the inside, which will secure a more peaceful transition of power. But yeah, generally speaking, I'm a revolutionary boy. Yeah.
So what I want to get your thoughts on accelerationism. What do you think of that? It's a very contentious topic within.
You're gonna split the left again, my dude. I don't know.
Well, yeah.
Oh god. I think that that holistically accelerationism is flawed. I do not think that humanity trends towards socialism in times of dire need. I think that humanity trends towards brutishness, towards throwing their weight behind strongmen, towards warlords. Essentially, I do not think we have very good base instincts for dealing with crisis. I think that socialism is something that has to be built towards very carefully. History is rife with failed examples of a socialist state. And I think that's because the closer you get towards an ideal, the more finely you have to juxtapose different social pressures, the less likely success is. I don't think accelerationism holistically, like just 100% fuck society until we all revolt, go socialist. I think that's a very myopic game plan. But little bits of accelerationism, maybe accelerating intent, maybe, I don't know, maybe kind of sort of secretly hoping that Trump does some more bad shit while he's in office so we can throw further attention towards the other misdeeds that he's done, maybe throw a little bit more criticism into the, the office of the presidency as a whole, the capacity that one man has to do so much harm to a country and to the planet. I don't know. Maybe the Paris Accords weren't really doing that much themselves to address global climate change, but by America leaving the Paris Accords, the good that we can do by highlighting America's role as one of the predominant threats to world security by their unwillingness to join with the Paris Accords might actually do more good than their participation in the Paris Accords themselves. I don't know. I think that good arguments can be made here, but I don't believe that you should like fuck it, just nuke society and eventually we'll get it right. I don't believe that.
Okay. I mean, I think that's enough on me making you split the left. Yeah, I'll stop you from destroying, splitting up your fan base some more. We'll move on to some U.S. political questions, shall we?
Ooh,
the first one I wanted to ask is: Are you actually connected to any political parties within the United States?
In beyond the fact that I am registered Democrat, no, I don't have any connections.
Yeah. Do you feel forced to register Democrat?
Oh yes, very much so.
So do you feel the current political structure of the U.S. restricts radical leftists, parties and actors from gaining power?
Less so than it used to, but yes, very much so. I mean, we can... sorry.
No, so you can continue.
I mean, we can see examples of this in play right now. Now, mind you, Bernie Sanders is not a radical leftist by any means, but even his tepid social democracy is being opposed pretty fundamentally by the mainstream media. Just yesterday, wasn't there some, I wouldn't call it a scandal necessarily, but they were throwing at his town hall meeting, they were throwing the interns of lobbying companies and CNN interns in there to ask questions posed as regular citizens. So they're throwing them some hardball shit. So if the mainstream media, the allegedly centrist media, feels comfortable doing things which deliberately sabotage the chances of somebody as comparatively tepid as Bernie reaching primary stage, then, whew, yeah, I'd say our country has a problem platforming radical leftists.
So, do you think that the Democratic Party could survive if, not even the radical left, but the soft left, the Bernies, could take over the Democratic Party? Do you think it could survive that?
I do think it's possible, yeah. That's one of the nice things about America. Our country is very, very wealthy. One of the reasons why it's so difficult to extricate politics from big business is because big business supplies the capital which is necessary to keep that political machine moving. The thing is, though, I think that there are alternate forms of not necessarily fundraising, of powering that machine. In a country like, I don't know. I don't want to say any stupid shit here, but if we lived in a developing nation where the wealth of this nation was founded almost entirely upon the export of, say, natural resources, oil, diamonds, what have you, there would be no chance to extricate money from politics, because there is no way to disconnect the flow of money from the looming threat of big business interference. But here in America, I very much believe it would be possible for the Democratic Party to sort of throw themselves demsuck and fund themselves through grassroots campaign organizing, through campaign contributions from businesses who directly benefit from the policies being pushed by them, like smaller businesses, through larger businesses that want to virtue signal their way into being viewed positively by left-leaning voters. I think that's possible. So I do have hope in that respect. It wouldn't solve all of America's problems, but it might make things a little easier.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I ask you that question mainly because of current trends here in the UK. I don't know whether you've followed it at all, but recently the Labour Party, which obviously was taken over by Demsuck Corbyn, it's had a recent split with centrists in the party leaving and joining and forming their own independent centrist group within Parliament. I'm just wondering, do you think if the left were to take over in the Democratic Party, do you think there would be something similar with a centrist split?
God. I actually am not sure, and I'm inclined to say no. And the reason for that being that the majority of people who seem to, like, never Bernie, you know, they seem to be fucking boomers. Like the mainstream sort of establishment Democrats, I don't see a really big lasting power base for them. I don't think they can compete with Bernie or AOC's like sort of populist approach towards garnering the support of the electorate. If they did split in that regard, it would be an extraordinary thing. That sort of thing happens very infrequently in American politics, as I'm sure you're well aware. What was we had the Bull Moose Party in the late 19th century. The Whig Party was the mid 19th century, right? I don't fucking know. It's been a while. Yeah,
I'm imagining that the Whig Party would have been comparative to the Whig Party in the UK in the 19th century.
Oh, you guys had your own Whig Party?
We had the OC Whig Party, thank you very much.
Oh, shit. Oh, well, my bad. I'll be more respectful in the future.
The Whig Party transformed and turned its name into the Liberal Party, which was in the 20th century. They changed their name to the Liberals. And then they got absolutely fucking destroyed by the rise of the Labour Party in the early 20th century.
Get fucked.
And then they turned themselves later on into the Liberal Democratic Party, which is still alive today, but it's got like 15, I want to say, MPs in Parliament.
Oh, okay. So they're not irrelevant then, with 15 MPs.
They're not. I mean, 2010 was the coalition between the Conservatives and the Liberals, because they had about 50, 60 MPs at that point. They were on their way to becoming an actual opposition party proper. But they got absolutely decimated again when they supported the Conservatives in their bid to raise tuition fees for young people. And
fucking liberals.
Yeah, the best way to not secure your future as a party is to fuck over the young, in my opinion.
Fucking liberals. I
Goddamn
fucking
liberals.
hate liberals. God, one of these days, I'm gonna go fucking sicko mode on my parents, but it's not today. Yeah. Wait, one second in chat. Vosh Vidya, do you do therapy sessions? As it turns out, I am not a licensed practitioner of psychiatry, but I encourage you to look in your area and find options affordable to you.
That's the best response for anyone asking for help I've ever heard. Most people just go full armchair.
Fuck that. No, God. Armchair psychologists are so cringy. Look, I give dating advice. That's the extent to which I'm comfortable prescribing. All right, hit me. Give me the hardball.
All right. So we were talking about liberals and centrists earlier. I wanted to get your opinion on whether you think that centrists are just as, if not more, reactionary than the hard right are.
I think that centrists do more damage to public discourse than the hard right does by far. It's very easy to discredit somebody who's on the far right, even if their actual points are difficult, because some of their points are legitimately difficult to argue against. If they're making these broad, grandiose social claims about how people do not work in heterogeneous societies and only racially homogeneous societies can propagate in the long term. Like, these are very difficult claims to falsify. They're wrong. There are historical examples against this being the case, but it still gets kind of murky. But thankfully, you don't always have to argue against these points. All you really have to do is put a spotlight on them and go, hey, general public, this guy's literally talking about deporting you if you're like 1/4 Mexican. Does this seem like a sustainable long-term, approach towards promoting the American, economy or whatever the fuck, and that's all very well and good, and then people boo and shame the far right person, hopefully, but centrists, I believe, do far more damage to the discourse by presenting essentially they are the Mott and Bailey. Their body, their squishy, flaccid, pale body, which kind of looks like a spring roll if it was packed with feces and bad opinions instead of vegetables. They step forward and they present. They are it's the Mott. I think it's the Bailey. The Bailey is the shit position, right? I fucking forget. They step forward and they're like, hey, listen. Just because this person is talking about comprehensive immigration reform, which may or may not involve the erection of a border wall around the country, doesn't necessarily mean they're acting out against Mexican people or that they hate Mexicans or whatever. They could just be proposing a solution to a long-standing American problem. And meanwhile, the reactionary is like cackling with their fingers like tapping against one another, because the centrist is doing nothing but furthering the social acceptance of these Nazi talking points. I fucking hate centrists, and I do want them to die. I'm very comfortable saying that. I have not had the pleasure yet of speaking to a centrist on my stream, but I imagine in doing so that I would probably resort to death threats very quickly. It would be very unfortunate for my for my goal of getting partnered.
Yeah, I'm sure you mean die in a video game.
Yes, obviously. In Roblox. Roblox has a very robust torture and death system that I would in detail describe. But yes. No, fuck centrists.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to ask you why do you think the Republican Party has been consumed by the hard right?
I think this was the inevitable consequence of everything we've seen happen in America over the past probably since the 1960s. So everything over the past 60 or so years. The latent fascism of America has been very disquieting for a very long time. I mean, you've got obvious examples like the Kent State Massacre, where United States soldiers shot down peaceful protesting students. Can we all take a second to appreciate how fucked that is? Can you imagine if in today's political climate there were a group of Berkeley student protesters who were throwing up a ruckus because they don't want fucking Molly Meme or Ben Shapiro or Steven Crowder coming to their campus, and things get so rowdy that the National Guard show up and they just straight up execute a bunch of peacefully protesting. Can we recognize how fucked that would be? Holy shit. But the latent fascism, our complete disregard for the well-being and prosperity and autonomy of developing nations, our worship of the police and military, our worship of God in an extent which is more, let's say, politically motivated than religious. The fact that we have kids stand up to do a literal fucking oath of fealty to the nation every day before school. The fact that manhood and gun ownership in some communities are intrinsically tied to one another. The fact that if I go on Facebook and I type in boomer memes, I will be inundated with fucking billions of old fucks, geriatric pieces of shit who are lucky they were just young enough to not make it into the Vietnam War, sitting on their fat fucking lazy boys, posting up memes about how if you have a man who's never been deployed, you actually have a girlfriend. All of this is fascism. All of these are tenets of fascism, the worship of the military and disciplinary forces. The fact that we've been enforcing a soft ethno-state in this country for fucking ages. Every time we get a group of people over here who aren't white, the Irish, the Italians, the Poles, we've got the Mexicans, we've got the Chinese, we had the Japanese internment camps. Literally, every time a group of people come here and we don't think they're white, we throw the ethno-state arguments through the window. Literally, every time. This happens every time. America has been a fascist country for a while now, or at the very least it has fascistic leanings, to the extent that that this modern Republican sort of pandering to the alt-right, to white nationalism, to me this is only a natural consequence. I'm sorry if I'm rambling here, but Innuendo Studios, he's a phenomenal YouTuber. He did a video on the death of the euphemism, in which he described the process, the phenomena, essentially, by which a euphemism, like, say, for example, border security, gets replaced with the actual thing that's meant to be dog whistled, which is keeping Mexicans out. And he commented on this phenomena, and he suggested that it's largely a product of the fact that we have adopted these dog whistles for such a long time. We've propagated this culture for such a long time that it's like fucking crack cocaine. It's not enough anymore. It's not enough. If you're fucking 35 years old and your entire life you've been fed basic, like, low-key white nationalist dog whistle memes on how Mexicans are going to steal your jobs, about how blacks are going to rape your wife, and then go over to Chicago and sell drugs to buy guns to shoot other blacks with and fucking fight the cops. If you've been pumped full of this shit your entire life, eventually a time is going to come where it's not enough to say thugs anymore, where it's not enough to say border security anymore, because these dog whistles no longer adequately express the vitriol you feel for the non-whites, for the immigrant, for the woman, for the transgender person, for the gays, for the whatever the fuck. Eventually, the fanaticism overcomes the need for political expediency, and the Republican base, if they want to keep getting voted in, have to appeal to that they have to appeal to that hyperbolization of the process. I'm sorry, that was a long-winded answer. It was
a great response.
Oh, well, thank you.
It was well thought out. I don't think I'd be able to do that on the spot, but yeah. So do you what do you think causes this? Do you think this is a process of, you said it started really from the 1960s onwards. Do you think neoliberalism has had its part to play? What's the purpose of this continuation of white nationalism?
I think it's a lot of things. The Hart-Celler Act in the 1960s, this is a big white nationalist talking point, ended up changing the restrictions by which immigrants could enter the United States. It ended up leading, in the long term, to an increase in brown people in the country. Increased, racial diversity will increase racial agitation, obviously, though this often happens in neighborhoods and in communities that have absolutely no contact with the people being brought in under the Hart-Celler Act. So what are you going to do? But you've got that. You've got the fact that the second wave of feminism And the development of women's birth control did a lot to destabilize what was previously considered to be like the ideal nuclear family. I think that a less stable family unit, which I'm all for, by the way, I want a less stable family unit because I want a different family unit. This is my little mini accelerationist plot here, you see. But by destabilizing the family unit, by turning this insular social unit outward, by deconstructing it, at least partially, you encourage people who feel misaligned by the current circumstances to be more critical of society because they're no longer distracted by the white picket fence, by the beautiful buxom wife and the 2.3 children. We've got that. We've got the fact that the Vietnam War did a lot to disillusion the more progressive American voter base with the American government and with war in general. And as left agitation increases, it makes sense that right-leaning agitation would increase corroboratively. I don't know. That's such a complicated question. Whatever this is, whatever we're experiencing right now, it is a utterly unique phenomena that'll be discussed in American history for as long as America continues to exist. And I think we are reaching its breaking point. Because once the euphemism dies, there's nowhere to go from that point. You can hyperbolize a dog whistle, but once you've stopped saying border security and you've started saying Mexico's sending us murderers, rapists, and thieves, where do you go? Like, Mexico is sending us drug cartel super soldiers packed full of heroin 9, a special compound that simultaneously grants them excellent aim with a gat and a larger penis with which to cuck you with your wife. You can't advance.
Sounds like a great anime.
That would be a phenomenal anime. As long as it's told from the perspective of a renegade like MS-13, a heroin 9 coked up soldier who wants to learn more about America. Whatever we're at the end of it. We're reaching a crescendo. Something has to break. I don't know if it's going to be the Republican Party or America at whole or the democratic process, but something will falter.
Okay, so I'll ask you an easier question this time.
Okay.
Why did Trump win?
I think a lot of fuck-ups went into Trump's success. The easy answer is that Trump is a big, fat, bloated businessman who is loud and obnoxious and pretty openly bigoted, and this appeals to a lot of Americans. That's, I think, a pretty straightforward answer. We've also got the answer that the DNC royally fucked themselves. Hillary was a terrible candidate. She had no idea how to respond to right-wing populism. Her strategy during the debates of just sitting there and staying quiet to let Trump, hang himself, a horrendous fucking strategy, unbelievably stupid. If people have supported Trump up until that point, it's not in spite of the stupid things he said. It's because of the stupid things he said. You're just giving him more airtime. So there were a lot of sort of exigent factors there. I do think, call me an idealist, I do think Bernie probably would have won the presidency if he had won the primaries, if for no other reason than because he didn't have that stupid email baggage holding him down. He probably wouldn't have just let Trump rattle and rattle on and on and on during these debates, and because he, like Trump, was fueled by a sort of a populist backing, whereas Hillary was very much an establishment candidate. Those are the two easiest answers. But I think there's a lot more to it than that. I do think Gamergate and the rise of online reactionary sort of white nationalism, anti-SJW nonsense and what have you, I do think that has a lot to do with it. They call it meme magic. It's just more, populist rhetoric, really. But I think that was a lot more important. A lot of people discount that because it seems too silly to be true. Ultimately, if I had to boil it down to like a talking point or a bumper sticker, I would say that Trump won because the the agents of power that were not Trump were utterly unprepared to deal with the reality of reactionary populism, and rather than adopting a strategy which would be efficacious in the election, they adopted a strategy that they believed would make them look faultless in the history books. Another video, by the way, by Innuendo Studios on value-neutral politics. The idea that, say, and again, I know I'm rambling here, are you familiar with how towards the last couple months of Obama's presidency, there was a vacancy in the Supreme Court, and Republicans blocked his efforts to get a Supreme Court justice appointed? Yeah.
Basically, right. So that they could get a Republican pick.
Exactly. What they did was illegal. They failed. The Republican Senate failed to do their job. They have a legal obligation to hold a vote on the candidates the president brings forward, and they failed to do that job. If I was Obama in that situation, and there is some legal precedent to do this, I would have just appointed a court justice. I mean, if they're not gonna do their jobs, like why hold up on them? Fuck that. They're gonna call you a fascist no matter what you do. Throw a left-leaning judge in there. In fact, throw the most left-leaning judge you can in there just to fucking spite them. If they wanted to, they could have held a vote, but they didn't, and they've lost their say. People are gonna call you an authoritarian, but fucking they do that anyway. But Democrats didn't do that. Instead, they made fun of Republicans. They posted some tweets about how it's been 168 days since Obama first laid out his recommendation for a list of Supreme Court justice picks to be voted on by the Senate, and then Trump gets in office and puts a fucking reactionary in there. That is how you lose to fascists. And it is how we lost to a fascist, or a proto-fascist, I suppose.
I mean, to be fair, he didn't just put a fascist in. He put a potential rapist.
Oh yeah, well. Of course, naturally, shittiness, evil is holistic. We can't just settle with a white now. Yeah, and they went with and fucking Obama. Didn't go ahead and appoint a justice, and then Trump comes around and they appoint someone with the most baggage any Supreme Court justice in recent American history has ever had, and he gets it anyway. Fucking kill me.
I think that from a legal standpoint, of course, like the whole rape allegations aside, which is ridiculous, me having to even say that.
Right.
The fact that he has multiple times talked about how he would like to just totally fuck up Roe versus Wade should have been alarm bells from like fucking New York to California.
They don't care. And the fucking centrist lib shits just don't give a fuck. The process matters to them above all else. They'll whine about it on Twitter, but when it comes to actually standing up to their rights being threatened, they can't do it. They're weak. They're spineless. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, it is. So I wanted to ask you how you can reconcile the fact that a large majority of Trump's base was this traditional heavy industry working masses. And how do you think he won them?
Well, pardon me for sounding like a coastal elite, but he won them because they're idiots. The idea, anyone with even a cursory understanding of geopolitical economy understands that those manufacturing jobs are never coming back to the United States. They were shipped over to the developing world for very, at least in the mind of a capitalist, very legitimate economic reasons. And not only are these jobs not coming back because it would be way the fuck more expensive for them to do so, not only are they not coming back because it would massively increase the commodity price of shit that Americans buy, which would lead to like fucking riots in the street. Are you kidding me? If they started putting out toasters, like, hey, buy a toaster, $182 minimum. Sorry, we had to give a couple thousand people in the Rust Belt their jobs back. There would be absolutely fucking Molotovs thrown through like corporate penthouse windows. But not only all of that, these jobs are getting replaced by automation in the developing world, even with these, even where they're being paid slave wages, even where the people over there have the fucking suicide factory netting put out outside the factory windows, even in a place like this, machines are cheaper. Those jobs aren't coming back. They're never going to come back. And Hillary completely ignored these people. The solution is so obvious. Just a little bit of rhetoric. Hey, yo, my dudes, I'm really fucking sorry that economic incentives necessitated all of you losing your jobs. It's super unfortunate. Those jobs are never coming back. Anyone who tells you they're coming back is lying. But hey, you know what? Vote for me, and I'll pass a fucking spending bill. $500 million being put towards re-education and movement stipends for people in these affected industries, so we can help you acclimate into a new career, one which will maybe pay a little less than before, but I mean, fuck, you're not going to be unemployed. You're going to get to participate in the modern economy. You're not going to have to rely on the completely fallacious notion that these automated jobs are ever coming back to you. If this could have been sold well, if this could have been sold, I guess, with a little bit of heart, this could have played over so fucking well for Hillary. But she didn't do it. They didn't do it. Their brainlets, their tiny, smooth marble brains couldn't comprehend these strategies necessary.
Did I just hear a communist advocate for supply side economics?
You know what? If we want lefties in the presidency, there are certain capitulations we're going to have to make to the existing system. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't fight against it like hell once we're actually in there. But god damn it, if what stands between me and winning a presidential election is throwing out a little bit of that supply, just a little bit of that supply side pocket sand in the face of my opponents, fuck yeah, I'll do that. Absolutely, I can get so much more done as the president who did some of that shit than I could as the loser sitting there on Twitter getting nothing done, who at least maintained their moral purity. Fuck moral purity.
So, do you think that the working masses were stupid in a way?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. The American education system is fucked. People. Yeah. Americans are stupid. People who live in rural areas tend to be stupid. People who work, like factory people who work like in the Rust Belt who used to rely on those kind of factory jobs. Yeah, they tend to be really fucking stupid. Tiny brains, no capacity for independent thought or like a rational analysis of a political situation. It's really frustrating. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that the proles are stupid. That's not true. Their stupidity is a deliberate and very much desired product of decades of underfunding schools and deprioritization of education and the maligning of intellectualism that's gone on in these communities. It's very much a product. It's, stupid people, easier to control and what have you. It's frustrating. It inhibits their ability to realize class consciousness. Yeah.
So you talked a little bit earlier on about globalization and, jobs being taken away from the Rust Belt, etc. Do you think that globalization has impacted domestic politics in a particularly negative way?
I'm kind of torn on that. That might be the most complicated question any human has ever asked me. Fuck. There are benefits. A globalized economy means that in the long term, we have an increased economic incentivization to care for the well-being, the structure, the development, the wealth of other nations, including developing nations. That's good. What's bad is that usually that growth is facilitated exclusively for the purpose of propagating additional exploitation of cheap labor. That's bad, but what's also good is that luxury commodities have been made cheaper for the average person. The propagation of, for example, the modern smartphone has done a tremendous amount to advance, not only on like a personal level, people's well-being, people's access to the internet, people's ability to communicate long distance, people's ability to collaborate with people of similar interests, but it's also really useful from an economic point of view. And just because I'm a communist doesn't mean I can't value the increase in efficiency of everybody having a computer in their pocket at all times, being able to respond to emails, being able to alert people when they're not going to be able to make something at a certain time, kids being safer because their phone has a geolocate thing, so if any shit happens, their parents can know where they are. So that's good, but it's bad because alienation of labor has now reached its sort of natural conclusion where specialization and the diversification of like job assignments have literally gone across the globe. It's not possible to be further alienated from your labor unless you were working a sweatshop on Mars. I don't know. Look, I'm with Trotsky on this one. Okay, when the revolution comes, it's got to be global. At the end of the day, I want a globalized economy, whether we live in a capitalist or a socialist society. Capitalism will do bad things with globalization, but I think that globalization is still fundamentally a good.
So I just wanted to ask you about the concept of globalization, or others put it dependency, this almost national Westphalian dependency upon one another in a globalized economy. Do you think that propagates this post-colonial neo-imperialism?
I mean, yeah. The IMF and the World Bank are both explicitly neoliberal organizations that very often, to the detriment of developing nations, push like capitalist policy development, and they subtly disincline these nations from engaging in social spending, which might actually lead to long-term growth in a way which isn't as profitable to Western interests. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty fucked either way, right? I think that when you're talking about like post-colonial neo-imperialism, whether or not we live in a globalized economy, we do live in a globalized society, in the sense that America has been engaging in warfare across the planet for upwards of a century now. Even if we didn't have an economic tie to these nations, we would still find other ways to bully them. We might, I mean, fuck, if we're not doing if we're not doing post-colonial exploitation, we might revert back to colonial exploitation. It's not that difficult to imagine. Can you imagine in a world where for some reason there's not a globalized economy? Right now we're organizing a coup in Venezuela. I mean, that's what it is. We're sending in weapons and arming, a radical opposition to take down a left-leaning head of state. How easy would it be in a pre-globalized economy to just sort of make it a colony? Just sort of, put your thumb down on the neck of Guaido and say, we're just going to take a little cut of what you got going on down here. We can't do that nowadays because the economy, the global economy, is interconnected to the extent that our meddling in those affairs would procure to say the least, distaste of other nations, of other agents who would not benefit from that exchange. So maybe it's a good thing? I don't know. Whew, that's all I gotta say about that. I'm gonna say some dumb shit if I keep going.
It's an incredibly complicated topic. Thank you for answering those questions, though. I just want to focus a little bit on some economic matters now. So do you think there's a danger in society being devoted towards the improvement of human capital?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Capital exists to serve humans, not the other way around. There are plenty of ways you can increase the efficiency of an economy and the output of a country, which make people fucking miserable. And there are plenty of ways that you can make people happier, more productive, in ways which don't like pump up that GDP, which don't increase our gross domestic product. No, the idea that humans should be put on the back burner to serve the interests of capital is not only is it psychopathic, it's also not true. Like, that's not what's happening, because we're not really putting it on the back burner to serve the interests of capital. We're putting it on the back burner to serve the interests of the people who control the capital. It's not a question of prioritizing the development of an economy over the happiness of its constituents. It's a question of prioritizing the happiness of the people who run the economy over the happiness of the people who participate in it. And that, I think, is a much easier question to answer. Do we sacrifice the well-being and happiness of 330 million people for the benefit of perhaps at most 100,000? I would say no. I would also say fuck you, sort of conceptually in response to that question. And then I might also say a great many other things that would get me banned from Twitch.
I suppose the Republican response to that question would be, are the 100,000 people white?
I mean, like I said, a great many things that would get me banned from Twitch.
I completely understand.
It does always give me a good chuckle, though, when I'm on Twitter and I see the fucking libcuck centrists like, would all these radical leftists oppose Oprah running for president because she's a billionaire? And, I mean, yeah. You think because she's a black woman that she doesn't get the fucking wall too? Jesus Christ. Who do you think I am? What kind of hypocrisy do you think I engage in?
Do you think I'm some sort of social democrat? So do you think that society should be orientated around economic matters? Are you there? Oh, sorry.
Oh, did I have myself muted? I apologize.
Yeah. You okay?
Well, I had to blow my nose. My apologies.
Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry.
So, yes, the economy is very important, and not just in the sense of who makes how much money or how these goods get distributed. But when we talk about the economy, we're talking about the sum of all human labor. We're talking about every commodity, every service, every product that gets produced by humans. And these things are, at least in my opinion, kind of why we're alive. Or at least they're a big part of why we're alive. Fuck, it's not just a matter of which corporations get which businesses in which cities to sell which products to which demographics, though that is, even in a socialist economy, probably at least tangentially close to what will be important in the future. But more broadly, I draw, though, to those of you watching my stream, I assure you, I typically draw better than this. But, you know, I draw and I make the YouTube videos. These are aspects of creative production, and in a sense, my distribution of them onto these platforms is a means by which I participate with the economy. In a world where subsistence needs are taken care of, that is not the world in which we currently live, but it is the world in which we could live with a bit of redistribution. In a world such as that, where people's basic needs are taken care of, what greater glory is there than setting your life towards the production of something great, using your creative and your technical skills to produce things that will be appreciated by others, whether that be music, art, film, a chair that you carve, maybe it's a service you provide. You're a wonderful monsieur, or you do excellent consultations for marriage therapy. Whatever the case may be, all of these are economic transactions, and all of them are valuable. I dislike strongly the fact that us having spent our lives within a capitalist superstructure leads us to believe that economic transactions are relegated exclusively to these greasy business dealings, you know?
Yeah. So, how can the theories of Keynes and Marx contend with the radically reactionary economic consensus of Thatcher and Reagan that are held to this day?
I mean, I think in the long run, it's easy. Leftist policies, leftist economic attitudes make life better for people. and conservative economic policies make life worse for people. I know that probably doesn't sound like much now because we're living on like a century of at least in America, of conservatives slowly eroding slowly eroding regulations on business such that life is made demonstrably worse for the average American citizen. And not very many people seem to be picking up on the pattern. But in the long run, I think we've got a solid case. Worker solidarity. I mean, the majority of the world will always be workers. And if, automation truly runs all and they stop being workers, then what will they be? They'll still be the proletariat, if nothing else. Our rhetoric is powerful, and that's why the right has done so much to suppress it over the past century. That's why the Pinkertons were hired to gun down union protests, to infiltrate their ranks, to assassinate leaders, to dispel agitative propaganda. That's why the United States has spent the past 70 years crushing every sign of like socialist democratic upsurgence in the developing world. They fear us because they know that in the absence of external factors, we would win. I believe this very strongly. There's no other explanation as to why the United States spends so much time and money and propaganda power exercising its, demonization of left-leaning policy. It must mean something. It must be because there's some value here, something they're afraid of.
So do you think there's a level of hypocrisy in the US's outrage of foreign interference politics?
I feel like it's hypocritical in the sense that we're very seemingly very unwilling to acknowledge how we're just being reciprocated centuries of long due justice. That's all well and good. But when you're talking to like the average American citizen and they're upset that they feel the electoral process has been hijacked by foreign powers, I'm not going to personally rail this individual American like, don't you realize this is what America has been doing for centuries, libcock? Not only because it's not productive, but also because I feel there's enough of a distance between the imperialist powers of American military and economic influence and the average American citizen that it's possible for a citizen to be concerned with one without necessarily taking the other to bear in regards to their sense of personal responsibility.
So, just a few more questions I think I have for you today.
All right.
Going back to Marxism, do you think, to an extent, Marxism is colorblind?
I do not believe that. No, definitely not.
Can you explain further?
Yeah. Leftists have always had a problem with intersectionality. I say this with confidence. Class issues are the most important issues we face as citizens of the world. After all, virtually every form of privilege is exacerbated by wealth, and virtually every form of disadvantage is mitigated by wealth. It's holistic. It's all-consuming. We do, after all, live in a capitalist society. That's sort of how it's supposed to work.
We live in a society.
We do live in a society. And that's all well and good, if by well and good you mean horrid. But I feel a lot of many leftists have difficulty understanding the way that this set of privileges and disadvantages interacts with the very fucking complicated and circumstantial race, sexual, gender isms that people, disadvantaged minorities experience today. How many fucking leftists have I talked to personally that seem really fucking woke on class issues, and then they're talking about like, are traps gay? Or how many fucking leftists have I talked to who are woke on class issues, and then they're like, fucking black people voting for Hillary over Bernie in the primaries. Don't they know what's good for them? I don't know. I don't think that that Marxism is race neutral, because human beings aren't race neutral, and even in a society where class privileges and disadvantages are abolished, there are still subtle social ways in which certain groups can be privileged over others. I think that an intersectional approach towards these sort of social problems is very, very, very much necessary. And I would, in fact, I feel so strongly on this that I feel as though I couldn't call anti-intersectional Marxists my comrades. I don't really want to stand with them. That's not really the future I want to stand for.
So I just wanted to ask one more question on populism. So do you think populism is always a negative? Can it or ought it be used as a tool for change?
Oh, no, I don't think populism is always negative at all. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with populism. I think that, generally speaking, America has a fairly strong democratic process. Don't get me wrong, I fucking hate this country. But generally speaking, I think that America does a pretty decent job of, because we can have this upsurgence of populism between your Trumps and your Bernies and what have you, and the electoral system still pretty much functions. We don't really get the riots in the streets, we don't really get the crazy fucking electoral freakouts that occasionally take place in other countries when there are these big sort of populist upheavals. This to me suggests strength of democracy, which is something I support. I do think that by and large America has a pretty strong civil society. It's one of the only things I like about this fucking place. With that said, the fact that we can withstand populism does not necessarily speak to the credit of populism. I believe that if a nation is capable of weathering populism, of seeing this upsurgence in popular demand for a non-establishment candidate, it means two things. One, the fact that the country is capable of weathering it without intrinsically bad outcomes is a tremendous positive in regards to this country's ability to adapt to change. And for two, the fact that there are these populist waves at all suggests that something needs to change. So much in the same way that, was it Weber who suggested that crime is valuable? As it reveals social antagonisms, it reveals the schisms at which social discontent exists. In the same way that I believe it was Weber who said that, or maybe it was Durkheim. Fuck.
I mean, both Weber and Durkheim speak to the valuable assets of crime in determining what you've just said.
Yeah, it probably. Fuck. You'll have to forgive me. I graduated.
Can I call you a functionalist now?
You could, but I'll fight you. I'm here for it. Look, I graduated a year ago. My fucking 301 and 401 texts are 2-3 years behind me. Give me a little bit of slack. Okay?
No, yeah. I mean, Weber definitely talks about it as well. Yeah.
At any rate, much in the same way that crime reveals social antagonism, populism reveals political antagonism, and I think that it is very useful in that respect. I would not want to live in a society where we do not have these social mechanisms which permit and which can weather an uptick in populism, because if not, I don't know. Where else would we feel the discontent of the masses?
And why do you think that populism is most effective in democracies that operate under a presidential system of democracy?
As opposed to what?
A parliamentary.
I honestly could not answer that. I'm very sorry. I'm not familiar enough with parliamentary democracies to answer that.
That's completely fine, man. So I wanted to do a couple of questions on how... So first off, what role has the media played, in your opinion, in enabling populism and reactionary politics in the US?
Mixed. The media doesn't really know what the fuck to do. I don't think. The problem is that the media fundamentally is run by people who have an incentivization in keeping things more or less the way they are. I mean, this is pretty basic stuff. We know this. And the pundits who express the will of the media are themselves usually pretty, like, wealthy older people who don't really fucking, get it. So I don't think they necessarily understand the reasons why people are turning towards this populist rhetoric. It's very easy to understand why if you're a Rust Belt, like, unemployed former factory worker, or if you're a recently graduated college student who's got a fuck ton of debt and no realistic way of paying it back because wages are shit, because jobs are scarce. It's very easy to understand populism when viewed from the perspectives of these people. But if you're just kind of like a wealthy, CNN sort of talk show host, you just kind of sit there and you report the news, and after work each day you go back to your same big fancy house with your same pretty wife with the big titty, and you got the husband with the big titty, and you go to, like, the same corporate parties with the same cocaine. It can be really difficult to understand why people are getting all fucking stir crazy with the populism. I think that the media has furthered the rise of populism in this country, if for no other reason than because their absolute inability to cover it effectively makes people angrier. And that, in turn, makes people, it ups the rhetoric, I believe, at least.
Yeah. So do you believe that communicative capitalism, or the big news organizations operated under a capitalist model of production, has corrupted this public sphere, or this public debate or discourse in society?
Yeah. Unquestionably. These places are fucking shit shows. Even if I were some, like, big popular public figure, I would hesitate to go into one of these news programs, if for no other reason than because they are machines designed to propagate the system as it exists today. And that isn't because everyone in on it is, like, some sort of co-conspirator. It's because they are naturally incentivized to do so through the profit motive, and the profit motive is best propagated through certain ideological... You understand the pretty much default Marxist answer. But yes, I agree very wholeheartedly that corporate media is it's a big old problem.
Okay, I mean, that's pretty much all of the questions that I wanted to ask you. I've got just two more that I thought would interest you, in regards to the fact that it seems like you talk extensively on concepts of gender. Would that be true? So the first one is, do you think the occupational structure under capitalism operates under a male mold?
You cut out a little. Could you please repeat that question?
So do you think the occupational structure of capitalism operates under a male mold?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, capitalism is kind of built on the unpaid labor of women, right? In regards to house rearing and child raising. Back in the day, back in pre-modern, like, tribal societies, it's been anthropologically determined that very often children were raised communally. The burden of child rearing was distributed amidst the community as a form of labor. What are you going to do today, Grug? Well, I don't know. I mean, I could go look for coconuts, or I could stay to the village today and tend to the children. This was a form of labor. It was reciprocated appropriately. Nowadays, of course, this is not the case. If you want your kids to be taken care of, if both of your parents are busy, you need to schlep them off to daycare, which is in very many cases prohibitively expensive. At the end of the day, capitalism may be built on a male mold, but that is by no means intrinsic. It would be very possible to have a form of egalitarian capitalism, where everyone suffers equally under the antagonisms of the system, where men or women or both share equal expectation to stay at home and raise the kids, to sacrifice their careers and what have you. This is very much possible, and it's one of the reasons why I argue against liberal feminists who say that having men in the home and having women go out and work is how we'll make society better. It's not. It's just you make society's antagonisms egalitarian. The real problem is, of course, that raising children is fucking nightmarishly hard. Should not be done by two people, especially not if they both have fucking jobs. Absolutely not. No. Child rearing, in my opinion, should be done communally, or at the very fucking least, the programs by which children can be taken care of while parents are at work should be subsidized heavily by the state. Not only would this make raising children less fucking nightmarish for new parents, it would also do a lot to prop up the economy, because it would mean that both parents can feel a greater incentivization towards working. There's nothing but benefit for this, but it sort of doesn't be very hard to get passed through Congress, some sort of federal spending bill to subsidize daycare. So, probably not going to happen.
Unfortunate. But my last question for you is revolving around the fact that a majority on the left, you could argue, are social constructivists in their interpretation of society. Do you think this ever creates tension between certain binary gender movements in the LGBT plus community?
Ooh, man, you're really not softballing me with any of these questions, are you? Yeah, I heard.
Well, it's
some fuck. No, shut the fuck up. Some student I saw him do an interview with Destiny, and they were just like, "Hey, what's your name?" "My name is Stephen Bonelli."
Yeah.
You know, hey, what got you into streaming? And you're hitting me with the social construct. God, all right, no, good.
No, fuck it. What got you into streaming is the real question I want to ask here.
I like the sound of my own voice.
Don't we?
Okay. All right, okay.
Yeah.
What the fuck am I saying? The kill me. You realize the question you just asked me hasn't been solved in like any social or political sphere. Right?
Hell yeah. It's exactly the reason I asked it, because I myself deal with this question constantly. Because I don't know the answer.
Okay, look, here's my take on it. Okay, here's my hot fucking take. Okay. We have to start with a set of assumptions. For one, we must assume that the concerns and desires of transgender people are legitimate. They're probably not fucking killing themselves and spending tens of thousands of dollars on surgery and completely uprooting their social lives and subjecting themselves to massive social stigma for the funsies, because it'd be like fun, because it's a nice epic meme. So we have to acknowledge that they are very legitimate in their desire for in many cases, this is to physically transition. In some cases, it's just to socially transition. But for the sake of this discussion, let's talk about going the full route. To be to a trans woman to take estrogen, to soften the body, to grow breasts, maybe to get breast implants, and to have bottom surgery. So, with all of that said, we have a fundamental antagonism here. I am a gender abolitionist. I believe in deconstructing gender conceptually. I don't like it. I just don't think it's a good way of categorizing or organizing human behavior, human characteristics. I just don't like it. Now, obviously, I fit very strongly within the gender binary. I'm pretty masculine in almost every respect. But I would like to believe that it is possible to embody these traits without embodying the overarching character type which assigns them. It would be possible for me to act this way in a society in which men don't exist. With all of that said, the antagonism here is simple. I'm a gender abolitionist, so I want to further the recognition that gender is illegitimate, it's a nonsense construct, but that nonsense construct is precisely what transgender people are propping up, are reinforcing when they say, hey, I'm actually a woman, I was born a woman, and I'll be transitioning to look more like a woman, so I am recognized socially as a woman. When they say these things, they're propping up a social construct that I disagree with. In this instance, in this antagonism, I would say this, and this is the only answer I have. The long-term philosophical goal of deconstructing gender can take place alongside the short-term goal of furthering the recognition of transgender people in society. The answer to this is such: in the long term, I support the abolition of gender, but for right now, I would be most comfortable living my life looking more closely like what society believes a woman to look like. Or a man if you're a trans man, of course.
Right.
While there is agitation here, I believe that the two goals are operating on such disparate timescales, gender will take centuries to abolish, if that. Whereas trans acceptance might take place sometime. Mainstream trans acceptance will probably take place sometime in the next half century. Hopefully. So that is my only answer. Their differing timescales allow us to resolve one problem before we tackle the next.
Hey man, that was a great answer.
Well,
Again, I'm amazed at how you managed to come up with answers for these questions on the spot. It would take me goddamn hours.
Well, hell, I really appreciate it. I don't know. I like talking. That's why I'm streaming, I guess.
Yeah, man. So that's pretty much all of my questions done. Do you have anything to ask me, or anything like that?
I don't have anything to ask you. I do have a statement to make, which is that I've enjoyed this conversation tremendously. Much more so than I initially thought I would. I really do appreciate you throwing me questions I'm actually interested in, and not softball, like demographic questions. Yeah. Fuck yeah. No, this was a super, super fucking good talk. Would you mind me clipping this and put it on YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely sure, man. Whatever you want to do.
Delightful. I've had a tremendously good time speaking with you. I need to get off this, however. I need to deal with the Cohen testimony, which I'm sure you're aware of.
Ooh, yes. Sure thing. Can I do a quick shill?
Oh, yeah.
Before
absolutely.
I leave?
Yeah.
Wonderful. So, hello, everyone. I stream over at Absolute Sociological Unit, of which I've just realized I spelled absolute wrong, which is hilarious. But you can find me there. I'm going to be doing a few more of these interviews within the next few weeks. The most recent of which is going to be me interviewing Shadow Chancellor of the Labour Party, John McDonnell. And then I believe that I will be on Stephen Crowder's podcast, interviewing him about certain things.
No shit, really?
Yeah, well, I sent him an email. And I got back, yeah, sure, give us your contact details. We'll try and fit you in. So hopefully that means I'll be able to talk to him and get his
absolute
reactionary
fucking man.
centrism.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Well, have a phenomenal time. God damn.
Thanks. The best thing is I also tried Destiny on this, right? And he absolutely cucked me.
Wait, did he just ignore you?
No, he didn't ignore me. He was like, oh, this sounds cool, but I'm going to New Zealand, so
wow,
have fun. Which I understand. I'd rather go to New Zealand than talk to me.
He's he's having his fucking bisexual threesomes right now. I think he's.
I saw the clips. Chat was not very happy with any of that, were they?
Yeah, they're a bunch of fucking incel babies. All right,
goddamn. Anyway,
I've got to get to Cohen.
Thank you very much, and hopefully we can talk again later.
I would like that very much. Best of luck with Crowder.
Thank you, and good luck to you. Bye.
Bye. Well, that went considerably better than I could have expected. What a wonderful conversation.